Here we are. So I think we're all live.
Yes. Hi there.
Hello everyone.
Hi.
I'm
Hi.
Praveen. I'm currently working at Digital Domain as a VFX producer and an active member of India Joy. So I'm really glad to host this session. So I have a great list of panelists here, really accomplished, and really thank you guys for being here. I know you guys are all busy, taking your time and
You're most welcome.
sharing
Thank
your
you.
knowledge here. So we have 1 hour to go over, and the topic we have is virtual production, which is really the in thing right now, if I can say.
Yeah.
So before I jump in, I would maybe just for the sake of the audience, we can have a quick round of introduction. So
Sure.
I can ask let's go with Parth. We can just have
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, hi, my name is Parth. I'm heading a company called Centroid Motion Capture in India. We are a UK-based company from past 25 years and decided to expand the services in the Indian industry. My role over here is more of a business development as well as a virtual production supervisor. I mean, mocap and everything was part of virtual production, but now since virtual production is coming up as a huge thing out there, that's why it's getting more specified as a virtual production. But yeah, I used to be a motion capture supervisor prior to that. So that's a quick introduction of myself.
Thanks, Parth. I mean, I've known Parth for a few years, and he's been doing an awesome job with a lot of mocap work and stuff. So it's good that he's into virtual production as well. Thanks, Parth. So, Mike, can you please give a brief intro about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Michael Connolly. I'm the president and creative director of Blackthorn Media. This is a company we started about 7 years ago now to do interactive narrative in different formats, generally in VR, but we've done some AR as well. We've done some mobile apps, and now virtual production has made the scene and is threatening to change everything.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Thanks, Mike. I mean, Mike has been very humble. He's one of the very accomplished digital producers in well-known studios. He was one of the key members at Rhythm and Hues, which has won numerous Oscar awards. So that's when we worked together for some time, and I'm glad I had spend some time with him at Rhythm and Hues.
Likewise.
So, Mike, Indranil, can you want to?
Yes. Hi. So I'm Indranil. I'm currently working as creative director at Live Pixel Technologies. I have a past in games development, animation, visual effects supervision, and then stereo conversion. And presently, I'm into virtual reality, augmented reality, and now since virtual production is coming up, so that's something I'm like eagerly and quite effectively picking up. So that's what is all going on.
Thanks, Indranil. Welcome on board,
Sure.
and I was
Thank
glad
you.
to meet you yesterday, and it's a good profile.
Thank you.
have
Likewise.
good gaming and as well as visual effects. So good to know you. So as I said, we have 1 hour. So I have a bunch of topics or discussion points that I'm going to bring it up, and I would request you guys to discuss the same. So I'd like to start off, kick it off with the first point is about. There's so much buzz about virtual production, and this is like the buzzing word. I remember, I think 10 years ago when Avatar came, stereo was the buzzing word. So, and then, but now it's virtual production. So I just wanted to know, maybe I can point it to Parth. What exactly is virtual production? I mean, what are the key things about virtual production, and what is the value it's going to add to film production?
Sure, David. So, I mean, for me, there's so many different terms that has been placed out there, for defining what's virtual production. To put it out simply out there, it's more like a production, but more in a virtual space. So that's, I think, the most simplest explanation I have come across. Everything that you do on a live production set, you do it with a virtual environment. So that's more, when I say virtual, it's more CGI generated characters or environments, and you shoot along with those elements. So that's where I combine. That's virtual production for me. It's such a huge. Virtual production is such a huge area that you can't specifically say, okay, that's only the LEDs is virtual production, or only the performance capture is LED. But it's generally shooting live production in a virtual space.
Thanks, Parth. So, Mike, I just wanted to ask you, there's a lot of kind of conception right now is like virtual production is LED wall or just replacing green screen with LED wall. So can you just give us a more in-depth of, I mean, is it just LED wall or is it something beyond we are looking at? What are the different aspects?
No, it's not just LED wall, but that's certainly the component that really electrified everybody. No pun intended. To me, I think, in looking at the what is virtual production question, in a way, it's whatever the Mandalorian says it is. That's obviously the real flashpoint, as far as I can tell, that has amplified the presence of the medium. Obviously, it's not the sole. It's not the only entity out there that's important. But it's very easy to point to. Where you say, have you seen the shots of the Mandalorian on the set with these LED walls and so on? So in that sense, that's an easy beginning to the conversation. But as Prof says, it's more than that. It's really all of the components of a regular production that you can imagine being done happening in a virtual space, or bringing people who are far apart together. I look at the VR work that we have done over the last several years, for instance, and think of those as a group of virtual production sets that we've built that we can now film on. What's wonderful about it is it's everybody's excited about it, and it's catalyzing a lot of discussions. And B, it's so as people begin to join the conversation, they find they're already familiar with a lot of these important concepts, and that the gap that they have to cross to really be in a conversation in the space isn't all that big, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Mike. So, Indranil, I just wanted to touch upon a lot of the filmmakers or the movie makers right now are considering it as virtual production as primarily as a cost-saving mechanism or a thing. So, how do you see it? Is it something you just see it as a budget benefits, or do you see any other benefits like probably creative advantages or logistic advantage?
So before I answer to this, I would also like to touch base on the earlier point.
Sure.
I think one of the good thing about virtual production, or probably the reason why that has become so famous now, or probably the whole talks about going on, is because the gap between technology and the actual shooting components are talking to each other. Like the camera is talking to the 3D space, where it's unreal at the moment, and at the same time, the technology has evolved enough that it can real time generate or render frames. So these are two important factors, I feel. Real time rendering and the fact that the components are talking to the 3D space. The virtual space rather. So that's also enabling this virtual production to a great extent. And now, coming back to your question, I think see, it's not just limited to LED screens or just that. There are a lot more components to it. It adds value to the storytelling, I would say, because the whole life cycle of a film gets shortened because of that. Like, for example, a director wants to create something. Earlier, they had to wait for a longer time so that it goes to the post-production and gets created and gets generated. But now it can happen real time, almost real time, or it can get an idea. I've been to shoots, and one of the biggest challenge has been to shoot in that frame wherein the light is at the proper timing, but that's not a constraint anymore in virtual production. We can take that liberty and not worry about the sunset or the sunrise. We can shoot at any time. Even in pre-production, we can create previews pretty fast. We can create camera viz, we can create tech viz. So these are things that really enable or rather give value to the whole life cycle of a film, at the same time storytelling.
If I could jump in on that a little bit as well?
Yeah.
One of the great benefits that virtual production is precipitating is this requirement that productions be more organized about their visual effects work than they ever have been before. So there's been this, visual effects and the types of assets that are built for virtual production. Generally, while we try and build them in advance on movies, generally speaking, it's slides and slides and slides. In order to be effective at all with virtual production, and in order to let people, have that magic moment of, I just asked for it and it appeared. You have to have the assets ready. You have to have very clear images in your mind first about what you're going to make possible. And anyway, that's as far as cost savings goes, that's one of the power points of the medium, and certainly one of the things that everybody is talking about it for.
Right. I mean, as just answering the previous question, that that since LED is not just a part of, I think tomorrow I'm doing a presentation on that itself, where I'm just breaking down the components of virtual production, because that has been my interaction, with the clients. Because a lot of the clients has been now thinking that only the shooting against an LED wall is virtual production, but that's just one of the way of shooting a virtual production. Then, I mean, back in 2008, we used to shoot for a Nickelodeon show called What's Your News, where there were PCAP characters, two performers were performing live, and they were getting rendered in a game engine. I think it was via TT Games, but we were also doing the previews in Motion Builder, and the recording was happening live over there. So as soon as they were performing for the take, it's getting recorded, and then it goes back to the post hours for just adding a fur and everything later on back then. So that was like real-time production. So virtual production has been there from quite a while, because even the virtual camera that we look at, that's camera tracking. That's also has been there from many years. We have seen it in Avatar and even before that. But yeah, it's just one of the way, because with the help of Unreal Engine and other game engines, the possibility of creating the parallax, a high quality parallax on a LED wall is possible. That's when the LED virtual production has come up in a recent time, so helpful. And I think that's I mean, it's just a part of it, I would say, to answer the question.
Sure. True. So Parth, I just wanted to just to build on that. So how long do you think, especially since you're based in India, so how long do you think, or do we already have that kind of a technology to kind of build what probably Hollywood or the West is doing in terms of virtual production? Do you think we already have that technology, or how long will it take to get that to India?
So for apart from the LED, everything else is there. That's available in India. I mean, LED wall is also, I mean, we did the LED walls shoot for a month over here, but the size was quite small. It was 30 feet by 10 feet. That was the only size because of the expenses of the shoot. But yeah, if there's a production who has a bigger budget, they can scale up, because the technology is now, it's already over here. It just depends on project to project if they would be able to scale it up in India. But yeah, I mean, everything is already over here. The tracking devices are over here. The good quality panels, the lowest pixel panels are also over here. You have a real-time compositing software available. So I mean, all the tech that's required for a virtual production, that's already been available locally also.
Yeah. At the same time, I think that it also depends upon what are we talking about creating as an end goal. Like, for example, if we are talking about films, yes, that would probably take a little bit more time, because LED screens are just coming up, or probably they are too expensive, or probably we'll find newer companies.
Yeah, I think Indran is.
Yeah.
That's fine. So, Mike, I just wanted to.
He's back.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're back. You can go.
We just lost in between.
Can you hear me?
We lost
we can.
Your answer.
Right. So yes. So I was saying that it depends upon what are we talking about creating as an end goal. Like if you're talking about a music video, or probably if you're talking about a commercial, TV commercial. I mean, I think we can create that right now. We are quite capable of doing that. But if a movie like Mandalorian, yes, that would take time, because those are all big budget. And at the same time, probably a lot of technicians are not aware of how to set it up yet. Because probably they have not done that yet, and those are for the simple reason that everything is so expensive at this point of time in terms of the components that are to be used for virtual production. So that's a major factor.
Thanks. Since you mentioned Mandalorian, so Mike, I just wanted to check with you. So there's so much buzz about Mandalorian, how it was made, and I mean the kind of technology, and it kind of wowed everyone. But as having been in this industry long, especially as a digital supervisor, so I just want your take on, I mean, what are the practical challenges which might have you would know, like probably Mandalorian would have faced, or maybe the next set of shows might face, or can you sort of throw some light on that?
On what on how production works and doesn't work in Mandalorian?
Wants to, like, what you've seen in a Mandalorian and whatever you know, but is there any knowledge or information that what are the practical problems they might have faced on the set or during the production?
Well, yeah, I think
wants to replicate that. What are the practical issues that, other than the cost, obviously, what are its limitations and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that jumps to mind is that it's certainly not a magic bullet in terms of being able to achieve perfect composites in all cases. So certain depth of field cases, for instance, cannot be accommodated for, and likewise there's a sweet spot for the distance that the camera needs to be from any of the LED components and the dot pitch of those components. It surprises me likewise that there hasn't been more public sort of dissemination of the color space issues that surround virtual production and the complications of essentially keeping your light simulation as pure as possible across the entire gamut of production. The same kinds of questions creep in as well on that front, where you think about, well, what does it mean to, suppose we're talking about image-based lighting and the efficacy of image-based lighting, and it renews all the conversations about now suppose you're using a matte painting as a light source, or this portion of the image that's driving the look is filmed and this portion is painted. I don't know. We could talk for a long time about some of the technical issues there. But how much time have you got?
Right. And also from the tests that I've personally done, I feel that there is also limitation in the movement of the subjects, especially in the Z space, in the Z direction, basically. So that's also one of the huge limitation. But I feel that at this point of time there are not many applications that supports that. Soon there might be AIs or softwares that will also control that movement, and at the same time track the camera in sync in the plane. So
sure.
So that will get solved probably.
So Parth, you want to add some?
Yeah.
I mean, you're already started working on some.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the main issue that we had was the pixel pitch. I mean, even we were shooting with 3 mm pixel pitch, and we even shot with 1.5 mm. There was still, we had to keep the background blur even on 1.5 as well. I mean, that's the lowest we could go based on the availability over here. So you could never have your background always in focus. You can play around with the zoom, but never with the focus on an LED volume, because you could start seeing the Moir effect as soon as you focus on an LED volume ball. Second thing was on the syncing side. I mean, unfortunately, we could not get the G-Sync card, but if you don't have the right hardware, even if missing out a single important hardware, which would break the link entirely. So I would suggest, if anyone going with a virtual production in India with a limited budget, to use the walls as a light source, but not as a backdrop, to shoot still against a green screen, so that you get the freedom and the scale if you want to go with the wider angle shots, and use the panels from the front so that you at least throw the light information, because that's the only purpose of LED, shooting on LED volume. If you're planning to do a roto anyways later, You either shoot it against a green screen and then do a light throw with the LED panels. That's more cost effective, I would say, and so it's like mixing different components of virtual production based on the requirement and understanding. But yeah, because of the limitations of hardware, I would say. Right now.
So, Mike, so I just wanted to ask you about now. We know how the Epic things, I mean, especially with Unreal, is dominating the space of virtual production. So, do you think like any of the other generic, other game engines are they, if they're entering now, are they competing enough, or are they just too late right now? What is your thoughts on that?
It's really a mixed space and will be a mixed space for a long time to come. But you can't deny that Epic is really the 800-pound gorilla. Pick your metaphor. They're a spectacular company that's throwing an incredible amount of resource at this problem, and by and large giving the results away. So the number of companies that are in the same space that can absorb that behavior as part of their business model that's a small group. And at any rate, the kinds of work that virtual production requires certainly can be done in other packages. It's very often a matter of if you know the principles, then you can sit down and crack your knuckles and figure out how to do it. But Unreal and Epic and the ecosystem that they are putting together is really, if it's not already the de facto standard, well, I mean, of course it is. But at any rate, I'm sure they would be quick to tell you as well. This is a big ecosystem, and plenty of work can and is being done that doesn't require Unreal. It's certainly it's mostly what you hear about, and exciting for, amongst other reasons, the fact that people who are new to the medium or new to CG in general have this staggeringly good tool set that they can just download and get to work on. Not just Unreal, but the Megascans library. And I'm quickly going to sound like I work for Epic, and I don't. But as I'm sure you all know, the assets, the pure technology that you can get. Epic just made an investment in Houdini, for instance, and I don't know exactly how that's going to land in the end user space. But I think it can only be good. I tend to think of it if Kim Library and company are doing it, the odds are there is a very specific end goal in mind that will benefit the entire industry.
Right. And also to add to it, I would say the amount of educational resources that they have, the training materials, that's enormous. That makes other people so easy to get into it. That's one thing, very good. And the way it talks to the component, nearly all of them it's pretty cool actually. Right. That's not there at this point of time with other engines. And these are two factors I feel is
Are you guys using the same technology, or
yeah, we do use the same technology. I mean, Unreal. Initially it has always been Mobu from many years, but then I think since 2015 onwards we shifted to Unreal Engine and created more of a pipeline, customized pipeline for that. But someone who is based out of Unity, who has been doing a lot of work in Unity, I think they also have a good options out there. So they also got the DMM tools out there. They can check out the DMM tools also on their website. So that's paid options, but Unreal, the only benefit is that it's been provided for free. So for students who just wants to get into the virtual production, or someone fresher, they can get into virtual production using Unreal quicker, I would say, because it's free. And yeah, as Mr. Michael mentioned, getting invested in the Houdini, I think that's like the right step which I was looking at, because we just saw the launch of Houdini 18.5, and then how they are bringing all the effects, the mocap and everything in real time. And I think that would be a right combo, because the power Houdini has in particles and the Unreal has in rendering, that's a good combination, which would be a next step in the future, I would say.
So, in fact, I would want to just kind of dig in a little bit, Mike. Now, generally, notion about game engines and the render quality compared to obviously the VFX render qualities that we are used to. I mean, this is kind of a thought that the game engine renders are not a little more stylized, I would say, compared to the photorealistic VFX renders. So, where do you think we have come? Where are we at this point? I mean, are we there already that the game engines can do that kind of?
No. I mean, there's still limitations. You still need to know exactly what these, to do really good work in these systems. You have to know exactly where their strengths end and some of the weaknesses creep back in. But again, when you look at the whole ecosystem, and for instance, the cards that NVIDIA just unleashed on the world, and we're in the early stages now of ray tracing on the GPU, and certainly that's a gigantic sort of thunderclap of improvement in the virtual production space. But it doesn't address every use case. It does, there are all kinds of situations that people, if they're not careful, can find themselves in, where suddenly things are not looking like they expect, or they're perhaps overly stylized, as you say. But generally speaking, I think there are again, if you're aware of the concepts, you can. You've got a better shot at getting over the hard parts and putting together a neat trick that looks just as good, or maybe having one small piece of this that's post rendered and brought back into a real time environment, that sort of stuff. Anyway, yes, there are problems. We don't have a reality engine that's as good as what our eyes can show us, but it's getting there, and the speed at which things are improving is phenomenal.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Indranil, your inputs on this?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I agree with Michael there. With this, and also, to add to it, the graphics engine, the way it's advancing, it's making a huge progress actually, and that adds a lot of value. And that's one of the space wherein the cost increases drastically for such a production, because we need to have dedicated rendering machines. We need to have, dedicated machines that can composite them live. So these are areas at the moment. But then I think that Mandalorian would be the best example wherein we can actually see how the render quality is in terms of the output.
Okay. Bart,
yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, since Unreal is main focused on the games, but I think somewhere Unreal is also actively listening to the VFX industry. It's like, because things that were missing is getting included more. And what I have seen is that since a lot of the things in between game industry and VFX are connected, like real-time ray tracing, and even the subsurface scattering, So if you recently, I just saw a tutorial of Aaron Seams, and I mean, he just shares a lot of. So he's the, I think they're the team who did Demogorgon from Stranger Things, and they showed a demo in the Unreal build where there was a subsurface scattering done in Unreal Engine. And high quality render, and it didn't look like it's an Unreal Engine. It looks like a Redshift render or something like that. It's that good. So I mean, I would say right now it's still growing, but it hasn't gone up to a level of Redshift, if someone just wants to compare it that way. But yeah, it's actively growing. And I mean, with the Unreal 5 demo which has been coming out, people are saying you can just import a lot of high poly assets, lights, and everything. Maybe next year we'll get to know how things would turn out to be, I would say, with the rendering.
So Parth, I mean, when you're mentioning about especially with Unreal, and so I want to know, like, in terms of I know we are talking about production here, but how about the students who wants to explore? I mean, are keen on this? I mean, is it similar in terms of the skill sets, or is it to VFX, or are we looking at a different set of skill sets? How do you see this?
I would say being a generalist would be a right approach, starting with the generalist being because anyone, I mean, there were a lot of my colleagues and friends who were in the fellowship program as well, and that's when they realized that being a generalist would be an ideal choice. So I mean, students, since they're just coming out of the school, if they try to expertise in all the areas and come and start learning Unreal Engine because it's free, so they can just download it. I think even they have a lot of tutorials which are free of cost. So that would be a first step to start with the engine itself, learning the blueprints, and that's, I think, only the blueprint would be something which they would need to learn on their own, because all other things, the lightning basics and everything, modeling, translation, rotation in a 3D world space, all those things can be cleared from their schools as well. But yes, they can definitely download Unreal Engine from the Epic website because it's free of cost right now.
Mike, you want to add your inputs there?
Oh, did you see my bouncing enthusiasm? Yes, it's an incredible time to be a student. When I think back to when I got into the industry back in 1996, the assets that you could, you had to really scrape and scrounge to get access to a Silicon Graphics machine, which might have cost $40,000 at the time. And then the alias software that ran on it was $20,000, and et cetera. And I took a midnight shift at a reseller just so I could have access to the hardware. These days, of course, you have machines that are radically more powerful in your in your phone, for that matter. But the educational the focus that Epic and other companies have put into education in this space is just incredible. And if you are driven and really care about this work, the assets for learning Unreal from the ground up, the incredible library of ridiculously high quality assets that you've got in Megascans that you have access to for free. These are things that when I just started Blackthorn, it was you would just kind of damn, these assets are so good, I have to buy them. They're just so much better than the average stuff out there on the market. And so you'd spend a small fortune on good assets because these things matter immensely. And now you can have it. You can have it all. It's absolutely mind-bending how lucky and energizing this whole space is for people who really care about the medium.
I can't agree more, Mike, since the days of Silicon Graphics where we came through. So Indranil, I mean, just kind of, so for especially who is like a student or a fresher, I mean, do you encourage him to, I mean, your thoughts on like, would it be encouraging just to explore virtual production right away, or do you think he should go through the traditional VFX training and then get into virtual production? What is your thought on that?
Yeah, so the answer to this is kind of overlapping with the earlier point that we were discussing about. Right. So I think that people planning to get into virtual production, see, everything is real time, almost real time, I would say, in virtual production, which would mean that they are at the shoot, they are handling the engine, they are handling the lighting or maybe the camera and the various components of it. So I think it's very important for everyone to understand the principles, of principle photography, how the lighting works, the principles of framing. All these things come into play when we are actually doing something like this in real time. Of course, the technicalities of how the engine works, how to use them, how the blueprints run, that's important. But also, I feel that at the same time, if the principles are not there or weak, it can create problem, creating, giving value to the storytelling, or probably a framing looking good. So having said that, students who are interested into this, I think, this kind of a technology which is coming up like virtual production, it can cover multiple areas. Like, for example, if there is a programmer it becomes very easy for him to be a part of the Unreal Engine. When they are writing codes for in the blueprint, they understand the blueprint much better, which means that they can run the Unreal Engine much better. There can be, if someone is let's say a modeler, or a texture artist, it becomes easier for them. So likewise, basically, I think for the students, they need to get themselves trained with first the principles, second thing the technicalities, and I don't think so. They need to be running in all directions. They need to probably focus. If they're focusing on virtual set design, that's where they can be. If they're planning on 3D characters, they can concentrate on that. If they're planning on the lighting, they can concentrate on that. So there is a provision for every different medium over there. And of course, I think along with what the students needs or willing to do, I think there has to be more institutes probably that.
Yeah, I think it is frozen again.
Okay, I think.
So you there?
There he is.
Yeah, you are frozen for a second.
Me?
Yeah. I think
okay.
The last few seconds.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Sure. So I'll just quickly move on to the next part. Now, I think I know virtual production has been the concept of it has picked up in the last year or so, but or more than that. But I think it has really become a hot topic, especially during the pandemic situation, during the COVID situation. So, do you see this technology? I know it's really big, but I think I would throw this to Mike. Do you see this technology going beyond the COVID phase, and do you see that it has a long-term viability beyond
Sure.
COVID?
Absolutely.
COVID is gone, then people will just move on.
No, this is a tool set that has immense merit, and will just get better and better as well. I promise you, we'll see much more of this as time goes on, and for so many reasons. It's just because it pops to mind. The ability of actors to see what they're acting against, for instance, is something that it's hard to replace. So letting an actor work in a big, beautiful virtual space where, granted, only the camera has proper parallax, but still they can see this environment in its totality around them, and you hear them talk about how much this matters in their performance. Anyway, for 100 different reasons, this is a technology that has a long future in front of it. I think it'll all of the research and development that's going into things like virtual humans, for instance, will start to cast a long shadow across the types of things that are being attempted in the space. The development of AI and deep learning to solve some of the problems that exist in the medium, for instance, will I'm sure there's things that we can't even anticipate today that will arrive at the next SIGGRAPH, and will become instant winners in the space. But anyway, there's just an emphatic yes.
Yeah.
Sure. That's exciting. Indranil, please, your thoughts on the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, as we move ahead, the technology will get faster and it will get cheaper. So it will be more readily available for even, let's say, indie filmmaker. So it is going to get adapted very, very quickly, very soon. And at the same time, as Michael rightly said, there will be an intervention of AI and different these kind of softwares into it for sure.
Yeah, sure. Parth, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I would agree, because virtual production, I would say it's been there even before COVID. I mean, even before 1 or 2 years. So I think like motion capture started back 25 years when we started. 2005 or 6, we did the virtual camera. So tracking a camera viewing that thing. So that's been done. VR scouting, that has been done from past 5 years. We've been scouting in VR, doing the recce. Recently we started with a real-time augmented AR. So when a performance is a mocap actor performer is acting, the director can visualize his AR version, that's the CG avatar, on a live set in real time. And then came the LED, which is now everyone is shooting. So I would say it's only when during the pandemic when people realized, okay, there wouldn't be a situation, where they can shoot out as they used to before. That's why, it picked up a lot. The LED wall picked up a lot. But I would say this mediums of shooting was there before as well. Even after thing gets normalized, it's going to still be there like before. The good thing is now only more people are exposed to it. So a lot more people, I would say, who were in there, are now exposed to it, and this has got a new medium of shooting. So there's still going to be a traditional way of shooting. This is just an addition of a new medium which they can shoot with. So I would say, yeah, it's going to be there in the future as well. It's not going to end.
Sure. So before I move on to the next topic, I think I'll just bring up, there's an audience question here, which I would like to bring it up here. We have Musarraf, who's just asking a question about, what do you guys think about adaptability of virtual production with the existing film industry in India? And most of the directors are coming from a traditional school of filmmaking, and they don't really understand this, the merits of film virtual production. So, in fact, I would, stretch it beyond. Like, I know a lot of international directors also. I mean, they are coming from a very traditional school. So, how do you see the adaptability of this in terms of directors or creative people? Do you see it as a step forward for them, and how do you convince them to use this technology? So, any of you, please.
Yeah. I'll start. So I think, as we were discussing, virtual production is not just limited to LED. It finds its space in the pre-production stage. It finds its space in the production as well as in the post. So, in the pre-production phase, I think one of the challenge is the previs area. Whatever the director is trying to explain, if that can be quickly converted into a previs. It really helps a lot for the director and even for the people who are going to work on it. Likewise, if we need to design sets, if physical sets, let's say, and if we are creating a set viz for that really helps. So these are the areas wherein we are introducing the director or a newcomer to a virtual production, through these medium. Likewise, camera viz, how the camera would be moving. And as I was saying earlier, lighting is a big issue in live shoots. So that, when controlled, if can explain to the director properly, it really helps a lot. So I think these are ways wherein we can.
So, Mike, you want to just give us an idea on? I know, as I said, it's not just to Indian films, but I know like a lot of Hollywood directors, international directors come from very traditional schools, and might find this. How do you think they find this new technology? Would they be able to?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their first time with this stuff, and I think it's like anything else, particularly any other visual effects components of production. And there's people out there now with, in the sort of traditional filmmaking world who have a deeper understanding of visual effects than anyone guessed they might, say 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So these things find their way into the mainstream. But virtual production and all of the aspects of it are, as we've already touched on, there are different parts of the puzzle are already familiar. So VR scouting, for instance, is it couldn't be simpler. Once you've got somebody in a room and you can pop the headset on them and say, all right, let's have a look around and see what we like. I think the finished work experience will feel similar to people in terms of approachability, accessibility. There will be a new slew of problems that anybody jumping in is going to have to get over for the first time. But all that means is find good people to work with who are at the very least patient, and at best know quite a lot about about the fundamentals and have had a chance to go around the block. But again, there's an enormous amount of material out there to educate people. If you're a traditional filmmaker interested in virtual production, just jump in. Start with the videos. Go and look at the directors from The Mandalorian, for instance. Disney has a lovely sort of side project where they're talking to with Jon Favreau and all of the producers and directors of all the episodes of the show to date, talking about, oh my God, I saw the volume for the first time, and they go from no experience to very facile with this very, very quickly. And yes, they've got folks from ILM holding their hand, but this is knowledge that is already finding its way into a very broad user base. And the most important thing is to just commit to doing it. And I think you'll find, yes, there are some hurdles, but go ahead and be a pioneer. It's really exciting stuff.
Cool. Nice part. Your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said before COVID, it was a bit difficult. Being in a virtual production company, it was a bit challenging for me, I would say, before COVID, for pitching out the services in the Indian industry because of the budget constraints and everything that was out there. But now when everyone has realized, what are the benefits that they would be getting out of the virtual production, I think, and COVID has helped. I would say, one of the good thing for that did to us was, that helped us, get a lot of inquiries in after COVID for virtual production. So, I would say, and a lot of these directors are now, because they saw, and all this content, as Mr. Michael said, the Mandalorian's gallery, which is out there on Disney Plus as well over here, which shows, behind the scenes of the director's experience. All of this thing is locally available to everyone right now. And, when the local directors who are used to traditional filmmaking are understanding, okay, what are the benefits they would be getting, because they share the same thoughts as the other directors. And then they realize, okay, this is what the benefits other directors have been felt. And that's how I think, because they are the decision makers right now. If they are convinced how it's going to help them, they would definitely do it a try. And that's how we just convinced. I think we did one project last year where we convinced the director for a performance capture. He did one shoot for the first time in his life on a mocap volume, and he was so convinced that his next film he has converted 30% of his script into a mocap. He changed his characters just to bring it more CGI instead of prosthetics. Going with the CGI and those things out there. Even shooting against the green screen and real time compose. So it's just that once they're got a hands-on experience, that's when they're gonna realize, okay, this is how benefit it's gonna bring me on. And same goes to the previs, because the previs in India, I think it's not usual to have a previs for a movie done prior. But if someone wants to get into a virtual production, the previs has to be much more stronger than how it used to be before. Then anyone can go confidently and shoot on a virtual production stage. So I think all this small changes has to be done. But yeah, it's not a very difficult job, I would say, for any old school to adopt this technology.
Sure. Now, is the virtual production in terms of I know I'm just going to see what I've read over about Mandalorian. Is basically the cost for setting up the initial setup cost was close to 25 million, which probably a big studios can only kind of imagine. Somebody of the scale of ILM and Disney, and a per day operational cost is somewhere around 1 to 1.5 million at a per day. Now we are talking about really huge budgets and costs. So how do you see this? I mean, how do you think, like, especially whether it could be an indie filmmaker or somebody, a filmmaker from out in Asia and India? I mean, these are not practically possible. Parth, and do you want to put in some light on how we can really see the cost might coming down, or what are the things that can be probably as an Indian filmmaker I can maybe comprehend? I
Sure.
want to use this technology, but just hearing these numbers might scare me a bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, recently, because when we are deciding on the project, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, the right way to shoot in India for a virtual production would be using the panels only for the projecting the light and not replacing, because the roto is cheaper in India than getting in an LED wall, I would say. So, you could easily have a green screen in the background, key out the characters, and then, that would be an easier way. Because, the main purpose of shooting on an LED wall is to get lighting on a subject. So that can also be done from the front light and the top light, and the wall, which can be at the distance, which is evenly green lit chroma, can be used. So I think that's one way to start. And I think once when the producers get more and more confident about, okay, yeah, this is what I'm gonna get, and then where I'm saving it later on, I think that's how the budgets would also increase towards VFX, where they would encourage using a bigger volume. But yeah, having a volume, like as you said, the manual reading is going to be very expensive, uh, because of the technology. I mean, because how much the LED panels cost right now.
Very
But if
true.
the costs are and the costs are going to come down, if there's a more of a demand, the cost might come down in the near future. So yeah, but at this moment, it's difficult to have that volume, I would say. So there are other ways, there are smarter ways, other ways we can use it and still do the same job.
So, Mike, just to kind of extend this question to you as well. So, as you're president of the studio, which is not, it's a kind of a relatively mid-sized studio. So, how do you plan to offer services for virtual production? Are you?
We're a tiny studio. We don't. We're actually not. Almost no service work that we've done since starting the company, which is a very lucky position to have been in after doing 18 years of service work at Rhythm and Hughes. But so we're spoiled rotten. But we've had the luxury of being able to focus on some of our own core projects and. Some of and some amount of collaboration as well. But I would say, we're not. We really made an effort to change up the track and to we felt like we'd made a lot of money for a lot of other people for a long time, and it was time to try this a different way.
Absolutely true on that. Is it kind of fair to understand that your virtual production capacity will be to build your own content? Is that how you want?
Yeah, well, generally yes. We make our own content. In terms of the virtual production work, this is really everything is with an eye on the future right now. So I was recently part of the same fellowship that I know a lot of people are looking at, that Epic is generous enough to roll out there. So they're taking two groups of 50 at the same time and running them through a gauntlet for about 6 weeks apiece. And people come out with a much better understanding of virtual production and their game engine, although that program is really only the first third of what's meant to be a considerably longer program. Anyway, the point being, virtual production is something that's sort of that's knocking on the door, but not yet part of the. You can't. I can't say go and look at this part of our webpage for our virtual production work, because that's all still too early.
Indranil, your quick thoughts on that?
So at the moment, we are using kind of indirect ways of virtual production, although our research is on for different ways how we can approach this whole thing. But as we speak, we are working on live events, which is kind of using a part of virtual production. Like recently, we did a event for Siemens. They wanted to celebrate their achievement through this event, and there was a award ceremony wherein there were virtual stages, and one person from their corresponding residence was meeting up with someone staying in somewhere else. So we are doing not films, I would say, but then we are getting into virtual production, but then in various different ways. So that's what is the present scenario at the moment. At the same time, as Parth was saying earlier, that use of green screen is, I think, is an important aspect at this point of time for people who cannot use the LED screens.
Sure. So since we brought up the idea of green screen, and we're just about running out of time, we have 5 more minutes, I guess. So I have a question here from the audience about the virtual production. It's a kind of a cool workflow that we are seeing. So how much of the VFX production will be kind of changing because of virtual production? So the specific question is like, are we going to see, because of virtual production in the LED world, so are we going to see less of roto and match move and keying not being part of VFX anymore, but mostly doing predominantly CG oriented work? I mean, how do you see this change the kind of a traditional VFX workflow? Mike, you want to go first?
That's a great question. I think it's still a bit early to say too much definitively, but of course, for those shots that are all captured in camera, that certainly affects the downstream work tremendously. But my hunch is that even on big, well-organized shows, you're still going to have a pretty healthy component of the full traditional pipeline running. I think the COVID has been a gigantic shot in the arm for animation work. Any of this work that can happen, with people working at home, and I think the visual effects industry has demonstrated pretty well that's a very workable solution to this problem. And it looks like we've probably got another year before COVID is fully in the rearview mirror. So I think with the importance of too much is changing at the same time here. You've got COVID, I think, essentially demanding that a lot of animation work happen in substitute for some of the more traditional shows that have become difficult to make or more expensive to make in a COVID world. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Anyway, I think the real answer here is ask this question again in a year or so, and we'll have a much better sense of how much we've got these virtual production studios popping up all over the place. But I think it's still a bit too early to say too much.
So yeah, I think there's just to add on to that question which is from the audience, so which Indranil you can take it up. So is it going to completely eliminate a department like camera tracking or match move in future?
See, I think virtual production is not going to replace anything. It's going to be addition. It's going to be a aid, helping aid to the existing paradigm. So no one would be able to linearly say, I'm going to use virtual production for my film. No one. I don't think so. No one would be saying that unless and until there are these films like Mandalorian, wherein Star Wars is created and Unreal is coming in. So I think it wouldn't happen like that. We will be looking at the story and the requirement, and based on that, we'll be working out reverse and checking where virtual production makes sense and where the traditional form of VFX makes sense.
So one very last question, which part you can take it up. What is the list of? I mean, if you want to have a quick checklist of hardwares, and I just who want to explore virtual production from his garage. I mean, what are those things that you want to kind of?
That's a bit tricky, because I mean it starts basically starting from a very if they want to start at the indie level, I would say have an HTC Vive kit, with a punk. I would say that would be a start. I would say, but it totally depends, how, because as in when you add one more $1,000 equipment, it just gets much better. So it's difficult to start at what would be a starting point be, but having a decent PC and a VR headset would be a starting point, I would say, because that would I think basically solve majority of the things, because you can still do the camera tracking with a Punk or a Vive controller. So I would say that would be a very starting kit if someone wants to get into that thing. I would. That's the start. But it's a very difficult question to get a complete list, because there's so many things that's involved in a virtual production, I would say.
Sure. I think I would have loved to. This was a very interesting session. So I would have loved to go on, but we just ran out of time here. And so really thank you guys for really taking the time and
sure, thank you.
Valuable inputs. Mike, I know it's 5:30 there, so really glad that for you to pick up and be part of the session and give your valuable inputs. Really thank you all for being part of it. On behalf of MAGA and all the sponsors and the state government of Telangana, really happy that you guys have been with us and shared your knowledge. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.